Entertainment. Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM. AM 630. WMAL.
7:38 on the Morning Majority. Let's go beyond the headline, shall we? We often talk about what these candidates are up to, what they really want to do. Let's get more in details about their tax plan. Dan Mitchell joins us now. He's an economist, senior fellow at the Cato Institute. So, Dan, we had 999 from Herman Cain, which was a 9% sales tax, a 9% corporate tax, and a 9% national sales tax. Now we have 2020, I guess you could say, from Rick Perry, which is a 20% flat tax, 20% corporate tax, and a balanced budget by 2020. What do you make of the 2020 plan from Rick Perry?
Well, I actually call it the 2020-18 because he wants a balanced budget by 2020, but the most important thing is that he wants to limit spending to 18% of GDP.
Okay, fair enough.
In effect, what he's saying is, let's bring the burden of government spending back down to where it was when Bill Clinton left office. So that's hardly a radical proposal, but boy, it would make a huge difference because our problem is government spending. Deficits and debt are just the symptom of the problem of too much government spending.
All right, is it feasible? I mean, I remember when we had the plan from the House, the budgets that was put forth by the House leader budget guy. Why am I Paul Ryan. Thank you, Mary Catherine. Paul Ryan. That budget was not going to be balanced until like 2040 or 2050 almost. So how feasible is it to actually have a balanced budget by 2020?
Paul Ryan's budget did not balance because he allowed government spending to increase by 2.8% a year. And as a result, it wouldn't be until 2036 that we balance the budget. If we limit the growth of government spending to an average of 2% a year, we could balance the budget in a decade. So it's not inconceivable to balance the budget. I mean, heck, the Canadians in the 1990s limited government spending growth to 1% a year. They had a deficit about our size, and they actually got to a budget surplus in just 5 years. So it's really a question of simply putting government on a diet.
What is the best way, Dan, you think, to sell something like a flat tax? We've gotten a lot of people popping up saying, well, this would raise taxes for middle class and poor people, and it would lower taxes for high. Do you focus on what part of it? The simpleness part of it? Do you focus on the fact that other countries have done flat taxes, too much growth? What's the deal?
Well, certainly the fact that we now have almost 30 countries around the world with flat taxes, and they've worked very well, creating more jobs, more growth, I think that's important. But I've given, over the years, hundreds of speeches on the flat tax. And at first when I did that, I would talk like an economist, marginal tax rates, capital formation, right. And yeah, I might get a few people nodding their heads. But what I discovered is what really motivated people, what got them excited, was the idea of fairness. They liked the idea of getting rid of the intense corruption that exists with the current Internal Revenue Code, 72,000 pages of law and regulation. It's a rat's nest of special interest playmaking. And if you wipe that out, replace the 1,000 forms and publications of the current system with 2 simple postcards, we will have a clean and neutral system. And I guarantee you this, here's what I would tell all your listeners. Do not believe the left-wing special interest groups when they say that your taxes will go up. Well, but don't believe me either. Take the postcard, take your 1040 form that you filed back in April, and simply fill it out. Your third grader could do it as a homework assignment in 5 minutes and see whether you're paying more, because in all likelihood you'll pay less. Under Perry's flat tax, there's a huge allowance based on family size. So like a family of 4, you're not paying tax until you're getting close to $50,000 of income, and then you have a rate of 20% above that and no double taxation.
Well, what do you say? What do you say to those people? There are those people, and if some of them actually may even be in the room in which I sit at this moment, who say, look, if you do the flat tax, people who aren't paying taxes right now will have an increase in their taxes because they're not paying now, and then they'll have to pay.
There might be a very good argument that they should pay something because we should all should have a stake in our government, but at least under Perry's flat tax, they're not going to pay. And you have a $50,000 tax-free allowance for a family of 4. You better believe that they're not paying any income tax. They're not paying any income tax under the current system, but they're not going to pay any under the flat tax. It all depends where you set that cutoff point before the tax begins.
So you're really big on the Perry plan, it sounds like.
Well, Is it perfect?
No.
No. He retains, at least for middle income and low income people, he retains deductions for home mortgage interest, state and local taxes, and charitable contributions. I would like a pure flat tax. So Perry's plan, in my mind, doesn't get an A, it gets a B+. But the current system gets an F minus.
So it's an improvement in the right direction.
To put it mildly.
All right. Explain a little bit, this is an important part, about the double taxation that you will no longer have under this particular plan.
If you look at the choice between consuming your income after you pay tax on it and saving and investing your income after you pay tax on it, if you consume your income, the federal government leaves you alone.
Right.
But if you do what every economic theory says is good for long-run prosperity, if you save and invest your income between the capital gains tax, the corporate income tax, the double tax on dividends, and the death tax, you can be hit as many as 4 different times by the IRS. In other words, we have a huge bias in our tax system against saving and investing, and then people say, well, gee, why don't Americans save and invest enough? We don't save and invest enough because the government clubs us over the head with a 2x4 if we save and invest.
You're right.
And by getting rid of the death tax, by getting rid of the capital gains tax, by getting rid of this pervasive double taxation, not only is the tax code much simpler, but we'll actually have a much more competitive tax system that doesn't punish people for doing what's going to create long-run growth.
All right, Dan. Good to have you on as always. We appreciate it.
Good stuff.